Hello everybody and welcome back to video 35 of this video. This set of videos. I was creating some lecture notes for a summer camp later this summer, and instead of making some videos and editing my lecture notes and deleting the videos, I decided to share the videos. If you're just joining us, if not, we're we're an awful long ways in. We're 35 videos. So we just got to I went ahead and created a game over cutscene. There was nothing special in here different than the first cutscene to introduce the storyline. I copied and pasted and put the character and alien model together, and the alien captures him and drags him off. And then it'd be nice to have a message box pop up that says game over. So that was a new thing, and I wanted to add that in the video, so it'll probably be fairly short to do that. And then we'll set the time for when this happens. So I just jumped online and downloaded a font real quick. I went to a site called 1001fonts.com, but there are lots and lots and lots of sites like it. I've been going to that one for years. They had 1001 fonts 20 years ago and have added a lot. So pretty much everything on there is public domain, but they're also really good about having the readmes and copyright information. So I found one that looked like the old circus flyers from late 1800s, early 1900s, and uh, checked the README to make sure it was okay to use it public domain for any purpose, and it was. So I downloaded that one, and just like everything, all the pictures and things we've used, um, and eventually sound effects, which probably won't make it in the video series because the YouTube copyright stuff looks very closely at sound. So we might have to just, in some video, quickly write the code for the sound, but not actually play the sound in the video to avoid the YouTube copyright stuff. So I'm going to drag that TTF file over to the assets. So now we have the font to use, and we need the words to show up. So just like so many other things we've seen in Godot, we can just go up to the root of the level and add a new thing, search for a text edit, which is a rich text label. I always just use the text edit. This will work for now. We just need to show some text on here. Grab, and it jumps over to the 2D panel. Um, the text panels in pretty much all of our major game engines are similar but different, and usually we have several varieties of all of them. So that's definitely one you'll want to kind of start playing around with, but it should go right in your hierarchy just like your other objects, and then you'll have a lot of edit functionality. Um, want this message to say game, one that says game over, which you can see by default gives us this little bitty thing. If I go ahead and run it, then we'll see that shows up in the screen. Oh, I was going to make that background transparent, but actually, now that I look at that, I think that'll look pretty good if the alien drags the character over here, and as it passes the screen, then we'll pop up the message, and I'll stretch it out so it covers the whole screen and kind of makes things dark nicely. I was going to make it transparent, but that'll work. And the font it gives us is kind of a boring font. So let's look at editing that a little bit. And as far as the first step in editing this, I'm going to click off the editable box. So then it is just viewing it. And seeing that that is slightly transparent, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out to fill up the whole scene. We have these little reference lines here, show how big the scene is. And if you scroll down, you'll want to look through all the different options, and on all of the game engines, it's going to be similar. There's lots and lots of different controls over the text. Uh, dig through the menus. Most of them are clearly labeled. Under theme overrides on Godot is different fonts. So there's not a font labeled in, just the default font. We can change the size, but I did bring that font in because I want something better than that boring default one. So I'll just drag that new font over and make this quite a bit bigger. What's 44? Oh, that's still pretty small. So if that's the whole screen size, then that's probably going in pixels. What's 123? Probably go even bigger than that. 148? 200? That'll work. And then I'll just maybe hit enter and tab up here on the text that's showing to roughly center it in the screen. Maybe the space a few times. That looks about centered. It'll be close enough for now. Good enough for the rough draft. It can be edited later. We can see the um, we'll make a full HUD for the characters soon, but you can see any of our text or any of our outputs just go on here. Usually when I teach the game dev class, the advanced game dev, we actually do this part first and introduce the scripting language that way. Like the first week of class, maybe first 2 weeks of class, if it's a whole semester long, we will use um, the input labels and things, input boxes and buttons and all the stuff that would normally go on a HUD, and set up just some regular simple applications and use that as the GUI to introduce the scripting and that functionality. I found that's a good introduction, but for a week-long summer camp, I decided not to spend much time at the beginning doing that. Just small regular applications, like something that calculates overtime pay with a simple tax value, or a tip calculator, or compound interest. The very simple introduction to programming ones to learn the script and that. So that brings that up, and I'm going to want to change that in the script. And like right now, if we run it, that's all it takes to put it there. It shows the whole thing. But I was thinking of having the alien animation drag the character away and then pop up this message so we can access it in the script and get a quick preview of that. And it's very straightforward. First thing I'm going to do is come over here to the inspector and turn the visibility off. So now we can't see it. So now if we run our scene, obviously we just get the animation. And I'd already set up the script. There was nothing fancy here. I set up a Boolean to tell when we're done. That way it doesn't keep walking off. Once it passes the side of the screen, everything stops and there's no more processing. Timer controlled animations instead of keyboard controls, just like we saw in the previous cutscene. And all it's doing is the position of our character, the alien dragging the character away, is moving off to the side. So when that timer goes down, it's going to call this message. And first thing I'm going to do is set that variable is done equal to true. That way all our animation stops and we don't end up with any extra processing going on and things. And then I'll make that visible, which hopefully after the video so far, you can kind of guess how to do that. I'll just click and drag this into the script to get a reference for it. It's called text edit. So pop that in here, text edit dot, and just like we saw before, we can come over to the inspector and grab that property right from the inspector, paste it in, and set that equal to true. So then this countdown, it'll count down for 3 seconds while the animation goes and then pop up the box. So nothing too fancy there. Again, things we've seen before, just a different combination of them. So this is when our alien catches the character, drags it away, the message pops up, and yeah, maybe eventually get a restart button in there or something. We'll do that later. I just wanted to get a couple small steps. For now, we can close the game and run it again. Is a good way to get a restart. We'll get a restart eventually. I guess another thing to do would be set a 3-second timer and then jump back to the opening scene so the game automatically plays again, or different ways to restart it. But for now, I'll just go with close and run the game again. So now we need to control when that runs. And I'm going to do that, spread it out over a couple of scripts. Actually, no, I think it'll all go in the alien script, won't it? Yeah, so here's where our alien grabs him. Grabs him equals true. And we want to kind of stop everything from happening then. I guess we could jump very quickly. We could jump immediately into it, but if we jump immediately into it, which would just be changing our scene. We saw that earlier in an earlier script, I guess in the cutscene it changed. Right? To change scenes, all we have to do is access the tree, all of the files involved in our game engine, and all the different pieces of software running, and we change the scene file loaded in. I'll just copy and paste this over since I looked at it for a reference. So we could jump over to that scene, and the scene we want to go to this time is under levels, the game over cutscene, and just copy the address from here, and that's the file we want to go to. Which I think this will work, but it's going to go a little bit too quickly. So if we give that a run, actually we have to go run the level. And there's a little alien. If we come over here where he can catch us, it jumps there pretty quickly. So it'd be nice to see some of that animation first. So we have a reference to our collider. We saw in the previous video or a couple videos back, we can get our character out of that. Oops, not card. Of our collider, which is our character, but I'm going to keep it generalized. I'll even call it an object. We know it. We could call it character or player, and it is going to be player type of data. And we can set all that up, but I'm going to keep it generalized as a reminder. We talked about in a previous video. The try-catch blocks that you might be used to, the modern exception handling, is not as reliable in game engines as it is in simpler software or things where only one piece of software would be running at a time. We have a lot of stuff going on in the game engine, so our try-catch blocks aren't something we can rely on. So I decided to write this generalized as a reminder of that. But we can just look at the thing we noticed, get our collider, and now we have a reference to our object. So we can just sort of disable that character, make it so that it can no longer move. It's still, the animations all stop and all of that. And to do that, over in the player script, I'm just going to add a Boolean. I'll put it down here somewhere. Var active, sounds like a good name for it. We'll just say it's active. That's going to be a Boolean data, and it's going to start as true, because by default, our character will be true. And then I'll just basically put everything here. So if active, then we'll do all this stuff. And just highlight all of it, everything that was happening in our process function, and ending it one time over. Oh, this was a debugging thing. We don't need that anymore. So now we only do this stuff if it's active. So when we have a reference to our character over here in the alien script from the collider, we can say collider.active equals false. So now it's no longer going to do that. And I'm thinking set a half-second timer. That way we see the animation and then go in there. And we've seen how to do that before, so I'll just create a new timer. Our countdown is timer data, and it's going to be timer.new. Then in our ready function, we'll set that up. Countdown.connect to some feature, so when the timeout on this timer runs, we'll call the end game method, which can go down here and create that to get rid of the error message. New function called end game, and for now I'll just pass. That way it clears out those error messages. Then countdown, wait time. I'll try a half a second and see what that looks like. I'm going to try to time it so that the animation looks good for the alien reaching out and grabbing the character. Countdown one shot is true, and then we can just add it to our scene. So add child, that countdown timer, and earlier we started it immediately, but this is where we want to start the countdown. Countdown dot start, and then after that countdown runs is where we'll go to the end of the game scene. So let's see if that lines up nicely with the animation. And I'm thinking it should just take a little bit of playing around with this number to find the right spot as far as that grabbing animation. So our character comes over here. Why'd everything get stuck? I'm not sure why everything just stopped working there for some reason. The animations were still running, but it didn't seem to have any control over it. So run over here. So I think this part ran. Maybe I need to do this down here. I think it deactivated the character because my buttons stopped working there, but it doesn't go into the grab animation. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, well, I have to pause and do some debugging so the video doesn't get too long. Let me see if I can figure out what we're wrong here. Okay, so that took a moment, just a couple minutes to debug, not too long. What was happening, what I did to fix it is the same thing we did in the other script. I just created a Boolean saying it's active and then stick that in physics process so that only happens. But what was happening is that the collider was full, or whenever it caught the character, it started the countdown timer. Then come back around, and obviously a half second is a lot longer than one frame of the game, or one frame of the physics engine, which is different than the rendering engine. That it come back around, and a lot less than a half second jumped in here. That collider's still full, so it started the timer again. So there's a half second. It comes back around a lot less than a half second, and it restarts the timer. So it kept restarting the timer and never letting it run down. So I just added a Boolean, the same thing we did to say it's active. So um, ultimately, that's something that's very, very useful to having your characters anyway. That way you can start and stop them basically. Um, it just hadn't been introduced yet, but that made an easy fix here. So first thing we do is turn that active off because it's already caught the character. Show the animation, get a reference to our character, turn it off so that everything is now stopped. That's why a Boolean like that's very, very useful. We just now got up to this part to introduce it. Then we start the timer, and after a half second, we go over here. So if we run that, oh, whoops, run the level. Make sure I'm on the right scene there. So now when we go over here, alien catches us, drags us back to his ship, and we get a message saying the game's over. So instead of just things happening, and we saw in the earlier video when the player hits the alien, it falls over in our score increments. We'll put a score up, very similar to how that game over message went, but maybe some other information in there as well. And now everything's handled by the animations. We don't have to we won't have to look at background printouts or anything to figure out what's going on in the game. So a big update there. Really the only new thing is this Boolean to control our characters, and we did that in both our player and our alien. I should click on the script. In both our player and our alien, we added this Boolean so that we can activate and deactivate them. Those might have been better terms, activate or deactivate. And we already saw changing scenes. We've already seen all of this stuff, timers. So the only new thing there was the text edit, putting the words on the screen. But now everything is handled by our graphics. So whenever something important happens in the game, the player defeats an alien or the alien defeats a player, we get notified through the graphical animations. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to put in this video, and we'll be back, and we should probably add a text edit so that we can keep track of like score and stuff as we beat up lots of aliens once we get more than one of them in. I guess next thing is we need our alien moving around so it's not just standing there. And then we'll make a bunch of copies of it moving around, and then it'll start to seem like a game. I'll see you in the next video.